The first agenda, which is vote-only items, with the Managed Risk Medical Insurance Board. And on the first item, with regard to Access for Infants and Mothers program, the AIM program, the motion is to approve and adopt the May revision. The second item is a technical adjustment for Mr. Mipp, and the motion is to adopt the May revision. This is just a minor technical adjustment, and no issues have been raised. And then the third and last on the first agenda is regarding minor adjustments to the County Health Initiative Matching Program, and the motion is to adopt the May revision. And this proposal merely adjusts the level of federal funds provided to counties as provided in existing state statute. And without objection, that will be the action of the committee. We've now concluded our first agenda. We'll move on to the second agenda. And we start off again with vote only. And there are a number of items.
You might want to go back to it when Senator Ashburn comes, because he's going to want separate.
And as we begin it, I just want to point out that there is a last-minute addendum to the vote-only calendar, and it has to do with OSI and DSS's additional issue, case management, information and payrolling system replacement project. And there are copies in the back for anyone who has not yet seen them. So, just to... All right, so we will take this as a whole. To accept the recommendations, including the addendum, and without objection. That will be the order of the committee, and we will leave this open for Senator Ashburn if he wishes to cast a dissenting vote on any of these items.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Wardlaw, Department of Finance. But we'd just like to get on record relative to...
And we would like you on record.
Thank you.
Yes.
Social Services, item number 3, probation access to CWS case management system, and issue 14, proposal for CCL inspection and licensing fees.
Yes.
To be on record in opposition to the committee's action.
So noted. Thank you.
And Jay Kapoor, Mr. Chair, with Department of Finance also. One other item under...
Can I guess?
Office of Systems Integration.
Go ahead.
Statewide fingerprint imaging system, we're also opposed to that.
That was my guess. Okay. Thank you. And again, we'll leave that open for Senator Ashburn as well. So moving on to our discussion items of the second agenda.
I think it's on page 21.
And that begins on page 21. And we invite up Department of Social Services. Good afternoon. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Pete Chervinka, I'm the Program Deputy Director for Benefits and Services at Department of Social Services. Your agenda very clearly on page 22 steps through on the group home rate litigation and related proposals. At the top of 22, there's 4 pieces to this May revision proposal. The first is what we refer to as the 32% rate increase ordered by the courts in recent litigation. There is additionally the injunction issued by the courts against last year's enacted rate reduction for group homes and seriously emotionally disturbed children. That was enjoined. May revision reflects the eroded savings for that by adding additional funding. There's a proposal for some some state operations resources and consultant resources to conduct a rate study and move toward restructuring the current group home rate setting system. And additionally, in light of the workload associated with that effort and to minimize new costs, we're proposing trailer bill language that would put a moratorium on new group home applications to allow the staff that would otherwise process those applications to instead assist in the rate study effort.
Very good. And it's noted that our current system does not measure or evaluate outcomes. That's something we would be moving toward?
That would be something we're moving toward.
Yes.
So stipulated.
That would make sense. Leo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minsun Park with the Analyst's Office. We just wanted to note that we agree that this is a good time to re-examine the role of group homes and work on revising the existing rate setting system by looking at costs and also the quality of care provided. So it makes sense to allocate some resources to the department to accomplish this, and we would concur with the level recommended by the staff. And we just also note that we're okay with the rest of the staff recommendations regarding the moratorium as well as the trailer bill language for SB 1380.
Thank you. And the good news is that in the past 10 years, we've seen the population in group homes decrease by about a third, 3,600 fewer. So we're already on the right path there. And clearly no shortage of beds right now, which is the need for the moratorium.
That's correct. That's correct. If I may comment on one of the staff recommendations on
Yes,
page
please.
23, number 5. While we appreciate the staff recommendation being consistent with the direction that we wish to head generally, we think that this rate study effort has the potential to create some savings and efficiencies, both on the fiscal side and on the policy side for the placement of children. And to the extent in number 5 that the level of resources that we requested is not provided, that progress may be slower than originally expected.
And I'm sure you recognize that we're all tightening our belts just a little bit here.
We're all there together.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. We have any public? Yes.
Yes, David King from the Youth Law Center in San Francisco. And we wanted to express our support for both the proposed rate restructuring working group and the moratorium on group home applications. We believe that a system-wide restructuring of rate methodology is long overdue in California, and we are especially pleased to see that the proposal language includes a discussion of group home rates in the context of the needs of children throughout the system. We hope that the proposed working group study will result in a rate system that reflects both the quality of services, care, and supervision actually provided at these facilities, and also the significant decrease in the use of group homes as counties have recognized viable and effective alternatives to group care. We also believe that in light of the need for rate reform, a moratorium on group home applications is especially appropriate. There are already many more licensed group home beds than children who are actually in group homes. And a moratorium would be consistent with the working group's mission of considering a full spectrum of placement options and designing a system that reflects effective placement priorities. So that we hope the state will use rate restructuring as an opportunity, and we encourage the subcommittee to provide the resources needed for the reform.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name is Doug Johnson. I'm with the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. We were the plaintiff in the lawsuit involved. We also support the staff recommendations on two bases. One is we were very pleased to see that you rejected the proposal to not move forward with SB 1380, the intensive treatment foster care initiative, the expansion of that. We think that's really important. Although we represent group homes, we also represent agencies that provide a lot of alternative services to group care, and the ITFC was one of those. It was one of the bills we sponsored. Senator Steinberg carried it for us a couple of years ago, and we think that, particularly in the context of a rate increase, was even more important to develop alternatives. The only concern I had about the rate study is I would have liked to have seen language that specifically linked it to another reform effort that the Alliance sponsored a couple of years ago, and that was residentially based services, which was to fundamentally change the role of group homes by adding services with families and to do aftercare services to make them more effective. And we're just about ready to roll out pilots of that in 4 different counties. And so I'm hoping that the department will be looking at that demonstration project as a basis for looking at how we can not just change how we pay group homes, but more importantly, change what their role is in the system, make it more specific, support alternatives, and then build a funding system to support the goals we want, rather than starting with the funding system and seeing what we can do with that. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Questions from the committee? Would you like a final word?
Well, I would apologize to the committee. I said that the group home moratorium, the staff that would be redirected from that would be working on the rate study. I apologize. Your agenda is correct. It's the SB 1380 effort, so I apologize for the lack of clarity there. And additionally, in response to what Mr. Johnson has said, RBS, certain residentially based services, is certainly one point of information as we move forward on that will inform the larger effort as well.
Very good. Thank you. So the motion then is to adopt the placeholder trailer bill language for a working group to revise the group home rate setting system, and also to adopt trailer bill language as placeholder to enact a 1-year moratorium, as we've discussed, on group home rate settings, and to reject the trailer bill language to make Senator Steinberg's SB 1380 implementation contingent on other issues, to approve your requested position at DSS, but for a 3-year limited term. And then lastly, rather than the $750,000, to approve $250,000 for contracts and consulting. And without objection, that is the committee's action. And second issue, yet with Department of Social Services, is proposal to continue suspension of AB 2488.
Mr. Chair, Pete Chervinka again. Your agenda again lays this out. This is a continued this suspension of the cost to do sibling consent. This program, when somebody wants to find a relative, this is the funding that would provide the social work time to do those kinds of search efforts. We are proposing a moratorium on this activity. The proposed trailer bill is a 1-year suspension consistent with the intent of what we're proposing to do.
And LAO, have any comments? Any public comment? Well, in a perfect world, we would not be suspending this terrific bill any longer, but clearly better than suspending it indefinitely. So the importance of this was brought to my mind just recently. I was speaking at some event in San Francisco. I don't remember the reason for the gathering, but there was a large crowd, and afterward I was saying hello to some folks, and a young man I'd never seen before came up to me and said, "Senator, I just wanted to thank you so very, very much," and I didn't know what he was talking about. And he then shared with me that as a result of 2488, he had been reunited with his brother. He hadn't seen in 15 years, and he had tears in his eyes. I had tears in my eyes, and it's easy to forget at times that the work we do here actually can benefit some folks. So I think we're all equally committed to seeing this fully funded and implemented. The motion then is to approve trailer bill language for an additional 1-year suspension. And as a result, Section 9205 of the Family Code would read as provided. And without objection, that is our action.
And we will do that even though this is your excellent legislation.
Thank you, Senator. And our third issue with DSS is the proposal to continue suspension of AB 1462 by Assemblyman Adams.
Good afternoon. This is Barbara Eaton. I'm Chief of the Foster Care Audits and Rates Branch.
Welcome, Ms. Eaton.
Thank you. This proposal, this legislation, asks for us to develop a way to set rates, audit, and regulate placements into for-profit group homes. Our whole scheme, our whole infrastructure around out-of-home care into group homes is around the not-for-profit organizations and corporations. So this work represents, the statute represents quite a bit of work for us in terms of setting something up that would allow us to oversee the use of federal money adequately, and we're required to do that according to federal statute and state statute. So under the circumstances, given our resources, we asked for a suspension of this legislation.
And legislative analysts? No comments. Public comment. Good afternoon, Mr. Mecca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank Mecca with CWDA, who are and have been sensitive to the department's workload issues on the suspension of legislation. With respect to this piece of legislation, we would support the staff recommendation to reject the trailer bill. And just for a moment, this is a bill that would allow us to bring in additional federal money into California. These are placements in facilities placement decisions made by the developmental disability system. These are regional center clients who are also in foster care, for whom some of these youth, the only facilities available for them and the placement decisions the regional center system makes are in for-profit facilities. These are 100% county-funded placements because by state law there's no state funding available. The Adams legislation by Assemblyman Adams didn't ask for state general fund, which frankly would have been sort of the fair way to treat the problem, but just asked if we could draw down federal funds to match the county funds. We think much of the work, a good deal of the work is underway. We stand committed to put in as much resources as we can to help the department implement, but these are very, very expensive placements, and the more federal money we could bring in, the more resources we can keep in the child welfare system. And so we would think that this is an exception that we would encourage you to make from otherwise suspending many of the mandates proposed by the governor's budget. So we'd support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mecca. Anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? The motion will be to reject the proposed trailer bill language and then to have the Department of Social Services absorb the workload, and without an objection. And then we have just one last item on our discussion agenda. And this is the Defense Appropriation Act funding for food stamps. Thank you, Ms. Eaton.
Mr. Chair, members, Charlie Metzger with CDSS, Welfare Work Deputy. What you see in your agenda is a fairly accurate characterization of what's before you in terms of the May revision proposal. The Department of Defense Appropriation Act did include $400 million of additional funding for covering food stamp administrative costs associated with the rising caseload that was associated with the recession. Essentially, states are permitted to use the money for any purpose associated with food stamp administration, and it was generally viewed as funding to help states sort of affect the strain that was being placed on the system based on the significant increase in the caseload. For California, out of that $400 million, there was $20.9 million that was appropriated for our state. It's available to us for federal fiscal year 2010, and if we choose and we inform USDA, it can be available through 2011, so it can be carried over. What you'll see in the budget is that we have utilized the $29.9 million to affect the rising cost in food stamps administration. As your agenda shows, there's been a significant increase in the food stamp caseload, almost 30%, in the last couple of years. It's almost doubled.
It's almost doubled in just 4 years.
In just 4 years. And so the funding has been incorporated in the budget. As long as we have rising caseload and rising administration costs, we can utilize the $20.9 million for food stamp administration. And by doing so, that essentially frees up some general fund money that can be utilized elsewhere. So that's $10.5 million.
And do you think any argument can be made that that's actually supplanting, not supplementing?
It would be supplanting if we did not have increased costs in the program. So if our caseload was static and we just took money out and shifted it,
right,
then that would be considered supplanting. Because our caseload is rising and our costs are rising all at the same time in the same year, it's not viewed as supplantation.
In fact, that's exactly what the money was intended for, so that we would be able to continue to administer for the significant increase in caseload.
Correct.
Very good. And LEO?
Thank you. Todd Bland for the Analyst's Office. We support the proposal to expend the money, and we don't see any supplant issues.
Very good. Thank you. And public comment?
Good afternoon. George Malaclaire with California Food Policy Advocates. We are always on the lookout for opportunities to improve the food stamp program, and that's why we're excited back in December when this money was identified and California was set to receive $30 million. So for us, given our poor participation, we're hoping to see, as the feds were, supplemental efforts, doing more, doing something to address the problems. We have the lowest food stamp participation rate in the country. For the working poor, we're second lowest when it comes to the general population. So we ask you to reject the May revised proposal because we really do, as you hear, have rising caseload. So we should have a rising investment and not squander these federal resources. We need to do it now for struggling families. We also need to do it to make sure we don't jeopardize future funding. The feds were pretty clear they wanted more from us with this money, and we want to make sure that we use it wisely so that when we ask for money in tough times and future recessions, that they're going to want to give it to us because we haven't squandered it simply for a general fund backfill. So again, urge you to reject the May revised proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Manolo-Leclerc.
Mr. Chair, Mike Carroll with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. We too have concerns with the staff recommendation, and we would urge the committee to keep this item open and consider the alternative uses that this money could go to. I think Mr. Manolo-Leclerc laid out a cogent case about the opportunities that are before the committee. And while this is certainly, I think, a use of the money that the committee could choose to do, there are also other opportunities here that I think could be more fully explored. So on that basis, we would urge you to keep the matter open to consider whether or not you want the funding to go to counties or perhaps to do a program augmentation expansion that many people have long wanted to see happen in various areas. So we do think there are other choices, and we would encourage you to think about keeping this matter open. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank Mecca with CWDA. We, too, strongly support modernizing the food stamps program. This is a difficult issue because there are many possible good uses for the funds. We just urge the committee to, if the money is moved to a different purpose, to backfill with general fund for the hole that would be created if you move this money out of where it was proposed in the May revision. We've got a significant underfunding in the core caseworker activity for the food stamps program, and that needs to be fully funded, as well as trying to find ways to maximize investments to modernize our eligibility operations.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Kevin Esden, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organizations. I think we also think that it makes sense that if the stakeholders could get together and decide and have more input into this process. This money was meant to increase the food stamp funding and not supplanting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak on this issue? Just to clarify, we have to complete our business today, so there'll be no issues left open. We'll be making final decisions on every item before us. And then, of course, the bigger discussions will be held in the next few days in our full budget committee. Did you want to, or could you please respond to some of the comments made? Ms. Metzger.
From the vantage point of the administration, we are facing an unprecedented fiscal deficit in the state, and we are seeing a significant rise in the caseload and a significant rise in the administrative costs associated with the food stamp program. And these funds have been provided to us in order to cover those costs. And it also provides us an opportunity to respond to some of the other things that are happening in our budget, and that's the reason that you'll see this proposal before you.
Very good. I think many of us in this room have been working for many, many years now to see California's eligible participation rates rise. As has been accurately mentioned, we are at the very bottom of 50 states. We also have some antiquated policies that keep us near the bottom, and this committee took action just last week, which will redirect funds from a finger imaging system, which, or actually just recently, which the federal government itself has been telling us to no longer use because, as our state auditor pointed out many years ago, these are not dollars well invested, and in fact is a hurdle for participation of those who are eligible. So the motion then is to approve the proposed one-time use of these federal funds, which also results in state and county savings. And again, that will be without objection of the committee. So we thank you, Department of Social Services, and Ms. Metzger, thanks for your help. Mr. Cervinka, thank you. And I believe we have concluded our 2 agendas for the day. See you in full budget in the coming days. Thank you.